prepare like, a PowerPoint presentation or anything. I'm just gonna kind of, off the cuff, I took some notes and we'll chat about some negotiating skills that I've learned over my career. I feel like negotiating is like an art and a science, but it's something that you can learn. The more that you do it, you kind of pay attention to how other people negotiate and you take cues from them. So to me, negotiating is kind of a relationship between power and need. Basically, what that means is like, if you have a big need, you're gonna have less power. And if you don't need something so much, you're gonna have more power to negotiate. So let's just say as a specific circumstance, like let's say, Matt, you have a home buyer that just, their property's under contract, right? So they are settling in 45 days. There's no inventory on the market. They need to find something. They find a house. Sellers can accommodate the settlement date. They have a big need. So do we think they have a lot of power to negotiate in that situation?
No, they need to get out. Yeah.
Exactly. They have a certain time frame. There's not a lot on the market. They need to find something. They found the house. They don't have a lot of power. On the flip side, let's say you have a first-time buyer. They're still living with mom and dad. There's no time constraints. They have all the money that they need, and they're just kind of looking around until they find the right house. There's not a big significant need there, so they're going to have more power when it comes to negotiating. Does that make sense? Mm-hmm. Okay. So here's just a few things that I kind of jotted down as like, I guess things that I like to try to take into consideration when I'm negotiating a deal. Whether I'm representing the seller or the buyer, you're always going to be working with the co-op agent. So I really treat co-op agents like they're my best friends. You want to get to the finish line together. And I think creating that relationship is like one of the most important things. So number one was creating a solution for all parties involved. I never go into negotiating thinking like, I'm going to get everything I want out of this, or I'm going to get my clients everything that I want. Yeah, that's great. But I think one of the most important points in negotiating is making sure that it's, as Keller Williams says, like a win-win for all parties. So it's a give and take relationship. You want to create win-win scenarios for both parties. Learn about the other side's wants to make sure everybody gets a little bit of what they want. So one of the first things that I do, let's pretend I have buyers, they love a house. One of the first things that I do is I call the listing agent, and I'm going to just have a conversation with them. At this point, I don't know that my buyers are 100% making an offer, what they're going to offer, what that offer is going to look like, but I'm going to have a conversation with the listing agent over the phone, not through text, because I believe in the art of, we don't do a lot of face-to-face negotiating at this point in real estate, but at least picking up the phone and having an over-the-phone conversation, because I think a lot can be misconstrued or not taken the right way through text and email. So I think it's important you pick up the phone, you call the listing agent, and you ask really good questions about the seller situation that they're in. What's their motivation? Have they found something moving forward? What settlement date are they looking for? That can really, really help you as an agent representing buyers in a negotiating situation. So the more that you know about a seller situation, the more that you can kind of use that to your buyer's advantage when you're making the offer. Does that make sense? Okay. All right, so compromise. Compromise is key to real estate bargaining. So is holding your ground where it matters. So it's about give and take. Like you can't go into it thinking that you're gonna get everything that you want. Maybe you get a house for the buyers at a good price, but you're gonna give up on being more flexible with the settlement date or some other concessions that are involved there. Again, going back to you wanna make it a win-win for everybody. In some situations, depending on the agent, I kind of go about it where I want to make them feel like they're winning in a situation, and that ends up getting me and my clients more than we would have otherwise. So I go into it like wanting them to feel like they're kind of getting the better end of the stick than I'm getting. Does that make sense? Okay. All right, so as you anticipate how to create a win-win situation, look for areas you're willing to budge on within the contract. So look at, for whoever your client is, whether it's the seller or the buyer, what's most important to them? Is it getting the house for a certain amount of money? Is it a flexible settlement date? Is it not waiving inspections? Find out their motivation and what's absolutely the most important thing, and be willing to bend on some of the other things if need be. Let's face it, we're in a seller's market. I feel like it's getting back to what we were in, a few months ago. Me, Jamie, and Caitlin all had offers on a property on Country Lane in Aston yesterday. None of us got it. There was 24 offers. There was, I think she said like 54 registered showings through showing time. There was like 45 people had signed in at the open house, 24 offers. We made good ones. I think Jamie's was probably the best. She was at like 350. It was listed at 325. No inspections. Good amount of down payment. And she didn't get it. You know, like I don't know how much they got, but it was just like there was a lot of offers that were a lot stronger. So maybe they got cash. Maybe they got 400. I have no idea.
Is that the one that Brooke posted too?
No, that's a totally different one. So I saw that Brooke had posted one where she was up against maybe 17 other offers or 20 other offers, and she got the deal for her buyer. So it's back to that like super competitive multiple offer situation where you almost have to give up everything to get the house. That puts buyers not in a great light because they don't have a lot of power. You know, the sellers have the power in this market. Anyway, anything you could find to try and compromise, I think it's going to make your negotiating a little bit easier. Being prepared to walk away. So let's think about, we've all bought a car, I'm assuming, right?
Mm-hmm.
Let's think about when you go to buy a car. If you sit down and like there's no way you're not leaving the car dealership without this car that you fell in love with and that you really want, versus sitting down at the dealership and knowing if you don't get that car for the monthly amount that you're looking for the price that you want, you're okay with walking away. You know, like it's gonna make a big difference in what you end up paying. And it's the same with real estate. It's tough in this situation because there's not a lot of inventory. So, you know, in a perfect world, we'd be able to express at some point, if need be, when we're negotiating with the seller's agent, that, hey, I'm taking them to see 10 of their houses tomorrow. So we're giving you a good offer. Let us know what you think, but just know that we're going out to look at another number of other homes this weekend. Right now, they're going to be like, cool, which houses? Because there's nothing on the market. So again, it makes it a little bit difficult. Some things we're talking about right now are like in a typical market. Not the one that we're in currently, but it's always good to be able to walk away, whether that's from a seller's perspective or a buyer's perspective. Don't just kind of under negotiate yourself because of the situation that you're in. Like, know your limits, know your client's limits, and be okay with saying, you know what, no, I'm okay. I've done that, and I've had people come back to me 3 weeks later, different market again, and say, hey, are your people still interested? Because it's been another 3 weeks, we didn't get another offer, and they've kind of thought longer and harder and are willing to negotiate now. And I've had buyers that are like, yep, we're 100% still in at our original price. I've had buyers that are like, nope, screw you, we're not interested anymore, and they can have their house sit on the market forever. So being prepared to walking away, I feel like is a crucial skill of a successful negotiator. Don't negotiate with all your cards on the table. Stay focused while you're negotiating. So always stay focused on the end, you know, the end result. You have to convey to the seller that you can and will walk away if you don't get what you want. And you want to be confident walking away if, hold on, writing down my own notes. If you want to be confident walking away, it can help to know what you're walking towards. So what that means to me is like, say I'm a seller, if I'm going to walk away from a good deal that I have on the table, I want to know that there's multiple other offers that I have lined up, you know, that I'm going to be able to review. From the buyer's perspective, if you're going to walk away from a deal that you're invested in at this point when you're negotiating, you want to know that there's other houses to look at. Again, an issue. Yeah?
There's a term for that. If you guys read Never Split the Difference, it's Chris Voss, he's an FBI hostage negotiator.
Okay.
You're back now, your best alternative to a negotiated agreement. So for a seller, it's the other offers you have.
Okay.
And for a buyer, it's other houses.
Yeah.
So
But I
definitely
think-
recommend reading that book.
Yeah, I think I've heard of him. I've never read the book, but I
It's
think
so good, yeah.
yeah, I definitely would like to read it. It's just I feel like again in this market, like a lot of that goes out the window because buyers seem to be so desperate, and there's not a lot of options of other things to look at. So you don't have that like, hey, if this doesn't work out, cool. I'll go look at the 5 other houses that popped up on my MLS portal today.
Yeah.
You know, so it's
so you
tough.
kind of start negotiating with your buyers and saying,
Yeah.
hey, I mean, let's say we got the house, they're getting nitpicky on inspections. You know, if we walk away, it might take us another 7 offers to get another house. Is that worth it to you guys? Is the financial result of that as good as, you know, eating this repair you might have to do?
No, 100%, and I think that comes back to like the power and the need. Like you have to look at your client's motivation. Like, is there something that's going to keep them in that deal and make them realistic or make them understand what you're trying to negotiate with them as their agent? Or are they just like, whatever, you know? I've had clients that are like, cool, we'll go back to the drawing board, no big deal. I'm like, I've showed you 55 houses over the past year and a half, like, and it's just no big deal, you're just gonna walk away from it. Sometimes it happens, you know? So, but yeah, no, I totally get what you're saying. It is good to know that you have other options before you get to that point where you're like, okay, cool, well, I'm gonna walk away and let's see if maybe that can, drawing like the line in the sand can make a difference. Obviously, including an escalation clause. So nobody wants to throw all their cards out on the table from, you know, the get-go. Using the escalation clause, I feel like can help you. Well, let's back up a minute. So how many of you guys have had buyers where they make an offer, they get the house without a counter, and they're happy that they got the house, but automatically they're thinking, we could have probably went in less.
Yep.
Right?
Always.
So that's like a normal way to think is like, we probably could have went in lower and we would have gotten it, you know what I mean? And they're not just happy that they got it. So using an escalation clause in this way, especially in a market like this, can avoid your buyers, you know, losing out on a house that they really like over a few $1,000s, but also not making them have that feeling because they have to prove to you that they got you up on the escalation. You know, so I like the escalation clause addendum. I don't like when agents are like, no, we're not looking at them. Like, I feel like, why not? You know what I mean? I don't have anything. Does anybody have an issue with escalation clauses in here?
Dominic and Christina.
Do they?
They basically teach not to use it, which
Yeah,
I
they
don't
just
necessarily,
say,
I don't think is great
highest.
for a seller. I think escalation stacking can really blow it up.
Yeah.
Great
No, I
for
agree.
sellers.
I agree. I think sometimes it's just less work for the seller's agent to have to deal with like, okay, now we have, right, so they
Oh my
like,
God.
they put it up front, like no escalation clauses, we just want your best and final. But I think sometimes it can hurt your seller more than it's gonna actually help them.
Yeah.
Because a lot of times buyers are like, okay, cool, we're gonna start here. We're willing to escalate $20,000, $30,000, maybe $5,000 or $2,500 over any competing offer, but people don't want to feel like they're like automatically going $50,000 over on a house that they're not 100% sure about. So that's a way to kind of bridge that gap and make sure that they have a better chance of getting it if it does get to that point. I see nothing wrong with them. I like the fact that they exist. I like using them. So, you know, I'm a big proponent of the escalation clause. Sorry, Dominic and Christina.
We will edit that out.
They're gonna come knocking on the door.
What don't they like about it? I've never like had a conversation with them
Their
about it.
argument is always that, you know, how is it a best and final if you're putting like an A and B type of option in there? I don't know. I couldn't articulate
Why is it a PAR form, Dominic?
They've done a great job improving
Yeah.
the form itself with the check boxes,
Yeah.
where, you know, previously there was a lot of ambiguity with appraisals and
Mhm.
all that, so.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, Steve and I have had this conversation at length, and it's powerful on both sides. And it kind of it just predictates like the next round of negotiating that you
Yeah.
don't need to have.
Yep, 100%. Were you gonna say something, Gina?
Yeah, I was just gonna say, like, all the classes that I've been in with Dominic and Christina, they're just always, to the point where we should talk to our clients and just figure out where they're comfortable at the highest they can go in, and not do the escalation at all.
Yeah. I disagree, but, you know, to each his own, whichever one you want to run your business. Marcia?
We've been doing productivity contracts with escalation clauses in them.
Good.
I mean, it is a
Yeah.
PA, it is a
But
PA
I
standard
think
form.
it
It's
gets
not,
complicated when there's like 4 offers with escalation clauses, and then you're escalating against an escalation clause, and
Right.
then that can, I don't know, that to me is like,
it can get tricky, and that's
Get
why I
tricky.
said, like, I think sometimes it's just easier for the seller's agent to be like, we're not looking at them. They probably
Right.
don't even discuss it with
yeah,
their sellers.
exactly. They
It's probably just like,
lazy.
we're not doing escalation clauses because they don't want to deal with the, like, does this really mean it's going to escalate over this escalation clause?
Because they don't understand it. It's part of the
Right.
business.
Yeah.
You just sit down, you look at all of them, and
That's
you
it.
try to understand as much as possible.
Yeah,
There's agents out there that just don't want to deal with it because they don't understand it.
yeah, no, I agree.
And in their head, they probably think, yeah, like we're doing the right thing, but
Yeah.
I don't agree.
Yeah, I don't either. I think you can get buyers to stretch a lot further if they can use the escalation clause. And I feel like once in a while you get that seller that like sees, okay, maybe John's clients put an offer in on a $350,000 house for $350, escalating to $375. This seller only has $350,000 offers, but they know that your people are willing to go to $375, so maybe they try to use that and counter, like, hey, well, we want $375. And then at that point, your buyers can either do that or not. They don't have proof that they're getting them up on the escalation clause, but I feel like that rarely happens. Like, I think when you put in the escalation clause, it doesn't happen that often that the seller takes advantage of, like,
It could.
you kind of, it can, but like,
Because they can look at those, and say, well, this person's more qualified, but this is a higher offer, so I'm gonna ask the
Counter,
better
yeah.
client to escalate.
Because sometimes sellers get greedy,
And that's
you
the
know,
way
like
it
they're
is,
already,
you know? That's fair, I
Or
think.
some-
When you just do best and final, it's not always best and final, because
Right.
if you're not using an escalation clause and 3 or 4 people come in at 375 with the same amount of deposit, same settlement date,
Mhm.
everything is so similar, most listing agents are going to play those 4 against them and call those
Mhm.
4 agents and say, okay, I have 4 that are very similar. What else can you do?
yeah,
So it's not a best and final.
yeah.
I feel like that's just
It's a way
a
of
horrible
alleviating
statement,
the
'cause
work
it's
on
never-
yourself as an agent,
Yeah.
but you're still putting work in to get that last deal.
Yeah, and
To
I mean,
figure
how
it all
about
out.
when you get multiple offers and it's kind of like a best and final situation, but your sellers are like, hey, any way we could go back to offer number 3 and see if they would be willing to do this? I mean, the sellers can realistically do anything they want, you know?
Right.
So sometimes that happens where somebody else is that much more qualified or looks that much better on paper, and, you know, who knows? But I'm, like I said before, I'm a big proponent of that escalation clause. So I use it a lot. I think it's a really good in a market like this. Anybody else have anything to say on escalation clauses? Okay, all right, we're good. Okay, so negotiate in person. I talked about this a little bit. I don't mean like in person. Like if I'm making an offer on John's listing, I'm not going to drive over to John's office and be like, hey, can we chat? You know, like, but I do believe in phone conversations. Like, I know it's not the way of the world today, and I think that the power of email and texting has left a lot to interpret for negotiating conversations. But, you know, I list a lot of houses. If I have a listing where maybe I have 10 offers, let's just say I get offers from everyone in this room, and Gina calls me to talk about her offer, Marsha calls me to talk about hers, and Sam calls me to have a conversation about her offer. Everybody else just emails the offer over, never hear a word from them. Already in my mind as a listing agent, like, I'm feeling better about Gina, Marsha, and Sam. You know, because they took that extra step to call me to explain their buyer situation, like to shed a little bit of light on the offer and the pros and cons of it or whatever it may be. We're starting to establish a little bit of a relationship, you know, like I know all of you guys, but let's pretend we don't know each other. Having a phone conversation with someone just to at least try to engage a little bit of a relationship is really, really important. You know, and sometimes I like gawk at the fact that agents will just email me an offer, not even text me to be like, just want to make sure you got my offer. They just are hoping that it like didn't go into promotions or spam, and
Yeah.
I'm like, you could have totally screwed your clients, because if I didn't see that, and I'm more on the ball than a lot of realtors out there, you know, like you didn't even make sure that it's actually in my inbox, that I received it, that I reviewed it. So I always like make a phone call and talk. I think it just like when they say, you know, if you can get in front of a client and actually get like a conversation or have a sit down buyer consultation or a listing appointment, your chances of actually getting them to sign the contract to work with you are that much better. It's the same with co-op agents to an extent, because when they lay all the offers out in front of the sellers, a lot of times it's going to depend on who's putting the most money in their pocket and everything. But for that off chance that they're going to say, hey, so this girl, Megan Kerezsi at Keller Williams, here's her offer. She called me. We had a nice conversation. She told me this, that, and the other about her clients. She also had the lender call me just to let me know that they're very well qualified. That's going to make a difference a lot of times. And when you're talking about 10, 15, 20 offers, you do whatever it takes to kind of stand out and make a difference, in my opinion. That make sense?
Yeah.
Okay. So don't steal. I know like sometimes Caitlin doesn't like to make phone calls. Like she likes to just hide behind the like texting and emailing, and I get it, you know, but I think step outside of your comfort zone. The more that you do it, it's going to just help you establish relationships with co-op agents that much better. You know, like I was just showing a house about a half hour ago, and there was an agent there that was showing the house at the same time. I know of him. He lists a lot of houses. Well, the first thing I did was bring up, oh, how's a new baby? You know what I mean? Because guess what? Next time I make an offer on his house, that's going to make a difference, you know? So use those relationships to your advantage, 1,000%. Okay, so face-to-face, always make sure everyone's on the same page and you get to read people's basic reactions. Again, it's not going to be face-to-face, but over the phone, you can find out so much more than just texting. Like maybe Pia has a listing, I make an offer, my buyers make an offer on Pia's listing. I call her and find out that her sellers are already under contract on a property, it's contingent on the sale of this house, they settle in 40 days. So I know now that they have more of a need and less power in the situation, you know, so maybe that changes the way that I advise my clients to try and negotiate. You know, you also call the listing agent to find out how many offers do you have on the table? Are you gonna be setting a deadline, or are you reviewing as they come in? There's so many so many answers that you can get, or questions that you can get answered by having a conversation. Ask good questions, obviously. Okay, then listen before reacting and focusing on emotions. So who here has worked with an agent that's either like gets just like too emotionally invested with the deal, or like is very aggressive in the way that they negotiate, right?
Mm-hmm.
So I mean, it happens all the time. I feel like we have to do a good job of realizing like, yes, we're invested to the point where we want to get what's best for our clients, but I don't get emotionally invested to the point where like I'm gonna get butthurt if somebody like gives me a bad reply to inspection, or I'm gonna like give them an attitude if it's not a full price offer, you know, like that's not how I do business, and I don't like to work with people that do business like that. If I work with someone that's a little bit aggressive, I'm either gonna like kill them with kindness, or two, depending on the person, maybe I end up matching that aggression a little bit. You know, so again, it's like you're knowing your disc profiles and your mirror and matching. Once you get to know an agent a little bit, you're gonna figure out like how do they work, how do they talk to me, you know, and sometimes you need to match that with them, and that's how you're gonna get across and have the best negotiating. Other time you just want to really kill them with kindness. So it's kind of gonna be like a down to the wire call, but you know, there's always people that I feel like get too invested in the deal as realtors. I never like to think about something like it's my next paycheck or my next deal on the books. I like to think of it as just, hey, if I can get this to the table, that's amazing, but if not, that's okay. Like there's something better out there for my clients. So I don't get that feeling of like getting my back up against the wall if something goes south. You know, like when I was younger and first got into the business, if something negative happened during one of my deals, like say it was a bad inspection negotiating, or you know, I was nervous to ask for a price reduction because then like houses took 6 months to sell. I would just want to like drop out, get a full-time regular 9-to-5 job, you know what I mean, with a steady income. Like I would just feel so defeated because I didn't want to deal with those situations. At some point in my career, my mindset switched and I was like, no, you know what? Use the people in the transaction to work together to figure out how to get to the finish line. That's always my ultimate goal. And if it can't happen, it can't happen. But I hardly ever have deals that fall apart because I make everybody becomes part of the team. Whether it's my side, me working with the co-op agent, getting the sellers involved, like, you know, just everyone works together. And instead of focusing my effort on like feeling kind of distraught and upset or like rejected, I just turn it into, all right, so what can I do to kind of keep moving forward here to get this to where it needs to be? And it's really amazing how different it can change your business when you change your mindset about these deals. So, all right, focusing on emotions. So real estate is emotional, you know, like especially for clients. Like there's some people who've been in their house for 50 years. They've poured their heart and soul into it. They've, you know, paid attention to every dollar that's been put into their house. They think it is the best thing ever. There's people that don't really care. It's just a dollar amount, you know, they're not emotionally invested, but you want to go into it assuming that everyone is. That's at least what I do. I assume that everyone's got some kind of emotional investment or emotional attachment to their property. So you want to tread lightly and you want to think about that and keep that into consideration. You don't want to call the listing agent and say, well, you know, the house is a shithole. It needs all this work. Like, you know, like tread lightly with stuff. You want to try and compliment the things that are really nice about the house, all while thinking, okay, it does need some renovating, some updating, but we really love this or that. You know, use that to your advantage. The worst scenario is losing your temper and walking away. So this is kind of back to the listening before reacting. You can harm your reputation, which I really pride myself on having a really good reputation in the real estate industry, and it has helped me time and time again, especially in a market like this where, you know, they're like, hey, Megan's really good at what she does. She gets to the finish line. Her clients are always like well prepped. They know what to expect. They're qualified. That has helped me so many times that I can't even explain to you. Like, and that's a good reputation. You have like my sister Jamie. She'll fly off the handle sometimes, and we're like, Jane, reel it in. You know what I mean? Because then people are like, oh God, Jamie Kerezsi, like, I don't want to work with you. You know, so it's like, I just will treat everyone. I have my breaking point, you know what I mean? But for the most part, I can keep it professional in almost any situation unless you get me to that point. Because I know, like, down the line, this is going to matter. You know, maybe right now I'm feeling a certain way, but like down the line, the way that I keep my composure and the way that I negotiate deals is gonna matter. Don't get emotionally invested. Keep it professional. Selling a house is just as much about emotion as it is about finances. So again, we talked about that. Like, it really is an emotional process. So whatever you can do to just be appreciative of that and respectful of it, it's gonna end up that much better for everyone involved. Focus on the outcome. So never lose sight of the end goal when you're negotiating. Have talking points ready. Don't let a few concessions make you lose sight of why you were there, while you may not have gotten everything you want, but the deal can still be a win. So basically, you know, maybe, again, this goes back to like topic number one. Maybe you get the right price, but you have to flex on the settlement date, or, you know, you have to end up, I don't know, giving a bigger deposit or something. You're not going to win everything across the board. It has to be give and take. Be okay with knowing that it can be a win even if you have to give some concessions. You know, because that's what makes it a win-win for everybody. That's that power of everybody wants to feel like they came out on top. It's just a human nature. Nobody wants to feel like they lost in negotiating. You know, everybody wants to feel like a winner. So what can you do to make the other side feel like they're also winning in this situation? Okay? All right, so, okay, any questions about those things?
I just have a comment.
Yeah.
I read once, and I use this when it's appropriate, that there's 3 things, the most stressful things known to man that upset people are A, the death of your spouse or member of your family, B, divorce, C, listing and selling your home is number 3 on the emotional scale. So we just have to always realize we're probably dealing with the people at the worst time in their life. We're one of them, you know?
Maybe not the worst, but like a very stressful time in your life, you know?
Situation.
Yeah.
Very stressful.
Like a lot of times sellers are selling because they want to upsize, or, you know, it could be a good situation, but it is a stressful situation. Like, I've only bought 2 houses in my life that weren't investment properties, and I don't plan on moving again until like I need 1 floor living. So like, if that gives you an idea of how stressful I think the whole selling process is, like, I don't want to do it. I'm not interested. You know, so it's a stressful process, and so understanding that is going to help you as well. Anything else? All right, so then I just jotted down like some negotiating pressure points. So they're basically like different aspects of the deal that influence the outcome. So number 1 is time. So if the seller's motivated to sell fast, for whatever reason, you'll be more likely to receive the deal you want. Again, this isn't happening a lot right now, but what are some reasons why a seller might be in a time crunch to sell that you could potentially use to your advantage as a buyer's agent?
Job relocation.
Right? Job relocation?
They hate their parents they live with.
Okay, that's a good one. Okay, so they hate whoever they're living with, will divorce, or, you know, that's another one. Anybody else?
Foreclosure or
Financial,
facing.
yeah.
Right, foreclosure, or like behind on their payments,
Delinquent taxes.
maybe they're closing on another property. So again, it's all about just the motivation, you know. In a more typical market, you can use this to your advantage. In this situation, maybe not so much, but time is usually something that if there's a time crunch on the seller side or on the buyer side, it's going to give the other side of the coin that much more power to negotiate what they want. Pinpoint the stressors and use them to your advantage. So I'm not saying this in like a mean and nasty way, but like your job, your fiduciary responsibility is to your client. So if you find something out that like maybe they are behind on their taxes, or maybe they're delinquent on their mortgage, if you find that out, that's all negotiating tools that you can use to kind of shed more light and try to get the best deal that you can for your clients. Another way to gain the upper hand with the time pressure point is to spend a decent amount of time with your co-op. So we kind of talked a little bit again about getting to know the person that's working on the other side. You know, like the more that you can engage in a relationship with them, the harder it's going to be for them to kind of not want to work with you to make the deal work, or to come to a place where everybody's happy. find commonality and bond, ask questions, always make the phone call. So like today with the agent, I'm friends with him and his wife on Facebook. So right away I thought of, okay, what can I bring up to him just to kind of spark a little bit of a conversation. I'm with my clients, so I'm not going to get into like a full-blown half hour of back and forth, but just something to kind of give him a quick compliment, ask how him and his family are doing. If it's the agent that listed the Country Lane that me, Jeannie, and Kate all had offers on, she had worked with Kate before, and Kate really enjoyed working with her. So you better believe, as soon as I called her on the phone, I was like, hey, I said, I'm Megan Kerezsi. You actually had a really nice transaction with my sister Caitlin. Unbeknownst to me, Kate also had an offer on this house, so, you know, might not have helped me, but like any kind of commonality that you can find to just have something in relation with the other agent is going to help. And it's the same thing with your clients, you know? You just find those common things. You know, when some of us have buyers walking through a house that like they're looking for certain things to find in common with the seller so they can write that letter or whatever, you know, like, oh, they went to Penn State. Oh, they, you know, go to St. Mary Magdalene's or whatever it may be. Like, it's the same thing with every single person on the other side of the coin with negotiating. Okay, so time is a negotiator's most powerful asset. Use it wisely. All right, so number 2 for the points is knowledge. So in any business negotiating, the side with the most knowledge will triumph. Does anyone not agree with this? Again, in a typical situation, so we're not talking like your buyers just have cash to blow everyone else out of the water, but when you're negotiating, the more that you know, the more confident that you can go into that negotiating, and the more that you're going to be able to kind of like deflect something that may come from the other side. So let's just say, John, I make an offer on your listing, and maybe the offer's below your list price, okay? We're not up against multiple offers. Maybe this is like 2010. And I go in light, and you're like, well, Megan, like all the recent comps support a higher price. Well, if I don't know what the recent comps look like, there's no way for me to have a conversation with John about what the comps actually look like, right? So you have to do your homework. If I know the area, I know the market, I know what the comparables look like, I can say to John, well, actually, John, did you see that one down the street that just sold a few months ago? It actually sold for less than this, and it had a back room, family room addition, or whatever, you know, like just know what you're doing, because the more that you know what you're talking about and you know how to have those conversations, then it's just going to make you feel that much better and, you know, be able to really talk the talk and walk the walk. The more info you have or can uncover about the property and or the seller, the more you'll be able to uncover the seller's motivation. So again, you have the conversation, you're finding out, let's say we're looking on public records. Like I'll always look on the public record to see when did they buy and what did they pay? And when's the last time they refinanced? You know, we can find out all of that information. So if I have the time to really do my kind of homework on a property, I'm going to find that out, because it's going to give me an idea of, you know, are they potentially close to like a break even point on what they owe versus what they're asking? Do they have room to negotiate if the price warrants that? There's a lot of things that you can learn just by doing a little bit of research through the MLS. You can find out about their taxes, you know what I mean, if they've been behind on their taxes. Reviewing the property disclosure, and really, I know a lot of times it's easy to just like email it to your clients and have them check it out and read it over and then ask you if they have questions. But if it's a house that you're going into that you know there's going to be a lot of competition, I really hope that you guys are at least looking that over, just to kind of breeze through, see if you see anything that stands out, because you can use that to your advantage as well. Calling the listing agent and asking good questions and knowing your market and the comparables. So really in a tried and true, just typical real estate transaction, the more you know, you're going to set yourself and your clients up to get the better deal. And the last one was options. So the party with the most flexibility in any negotiation has the most power. So again, it's needs and power. One of the most powerful pressure points in negotiation is making it clear that you have options. Don't be desperate. Give yourself more leverage. Don't mention this unless you have to. So you don't want to go into any negotiation saying like, listen, bud, here's our offer. I'm taking them to see 10 houses tomorrow. Let me know if you like it or not. You know, like you want to use that as like a last resort. Like if they're kind of giving you some fallback, just say, okay, like I appreciate that they're not happy with the price, but just so you know, I am taking them out to see some more houses tomorrow. So I would love to get this buttoned up with you, but if not, you know, I can touch base with you tomorrow after we get done our search and let you know if they're still interested. Like, create a little bit of a sense of urgency, and you can do that from the seller side and the buyer side. Maybe from the seller's perspective, I get an offer on one of my properties, and, you know, maybe it's not exactly what my sellers want, but I have an open house scheduled for 2 days later. I could say, hey, I would love to get this done if we can work this out, but, you know, I do have an open house scheduled on Sunday, so if you want, I can update you and let you know how that goes and if we receive any other offers. Or like, hey, I have 25 scheduled showings tomorrow. Like, I would love to get this done with you tonight and get under contract, but if not, would you like me to keep you updated on other offers as they come in, because we have a ton of showings tomorrow. You know, so use that to your advantage. Like, always create a sense of urgency if you feel like it's needed and necessary, and you could do that from either side. The last one that I said was just like being confident, and I think that comes back to like really knowledge and experience and like going through this and paying attention to how other people negotiate, because the more confident that you could be with what you're doing, like, you're going to be able to do it almost with your eyes closed, you know, and we can all become like powerful and really good negotiators. You just have to kind of know who you're negotiating with on the other side, pay attention to profiles and mirrors and matching, and do your research, and really just have like that tool of a lot of knowledge in your back pocket to use when it comes down to it. So, anybody have any questions? Or like any negotiatings lately that you want to like kind of talk through? Nobody? Has anyone negotiated anything lately?
Those were the days when we could negotiate.
Are you calling like 7 on a Saturday? Because I always try not to piss the other agent off,
Like 7 a.m.?
PM, AM, whatever. Like, so I wanna talk to them, but I don't wanna annoy them.
Mhm.
I mean, nobody has any.
So what I'll usually do, I won't call at 7 a.m. because I'm not a morning person. Like, I'm up till midnight every night, but like, if I can help it, I don't wake up before 8 o'clock in the morning.
Yeah.
You know, so I won't call at 7 a.m. But if it's later at night, I might text them and say like, hey, it's Megan Kerezsi. I just sent over an offer. Do you have a few minutes to chat?
Okay.
If they say like, yeah, no problem, call me, or hey, can you call me tomorrow morning? Like, I'm like, cool, no problem. And then I'll call them the next morning. Like, well, what time in the morning works for you? You know, so I kind of treat it like that, because I also think about not being disrespectful, you know, like, you want to definitely not set off on the wrong foot. But yeah, that's a good question. But I always, anyone that's made offers, do you agree with, do you normally like pick up the phone and make the phone call to the listing agent? Yeah.
Always.
I do think it's really, really important. You know?
And then another thing, that happened, like, for example, for, the late time calls. Like, unless the agent calls me and says, please, I don't care what time it is, just call me and let me know. You know what I mean? Then I'll just shoot a text and be like, hey, are you still up? And if they are, then I'll call. But,
Yeah.
you know, otherwise I would just wait.
So one
I
other
don't like to call people after 8 o'clock. I feel like that's their time.
Yeah, no, I mean, everybody's different. Like, I don't mind if people call me after 8. If I'm in the middle of something I won't answer, they can leave a message and I'll call them back if I want to, you know, but I think everybody's a little bit different with that. One thing I would say too that really helps in the future when it comes to negotiating with different co-op agents is, let's say you have an offer or you have a listing, you get a lot of offers. I hate when I just get like a general email saying like, hey, thanks for your offer, you didn't get it, we went with something else. Like, it means so much to me when somebody takes the time to call me to say, hey Megan, thanks so much for your offer. Like, it was a great one, but unfortunately they did decide to go with another offer. Like, yeah, you can get some flack from people sometimes when you're calling as the listing agent. You have to be prepared that they're not gonna be happy, you know, because they have to then turn around and call their clients and be the bearer of bad news for them. But in the long run, I think some things are just gonna be appreciated so much more down the line, and they're gonna make you stand out as like a true professional. You know, so I really try to, in most situations, pick up the phone and just make that call. I try to make it as quick as I can. Secretly, I'm hoping that I get their voicemail, you know, because it's so much easier just to leave a message and say you didn't get it. But I know that people appreciate it in the back of their minds, whether they're like, get their back up against the wall or get frustrated. And you can kind of try to help them a little bit by saying like, listen, you're not going to give them all the information about the offer that your sellers went with, but you can give them a little bit of help to be able to relay some information to their buyers. You know, because some of these buyers have made 5, 6, 7, 10 offers. So me as a buyer's agent, when I call my buyers to say they didn't get the house, it feels really nice to be able to say, but here's the deal, like, I spoke with the agent, they had 24 offers, like, they ended up closer to 400 than to the 325 that they were listed at. You know, they had most of the offers waived inspections. Whatever information you can get from that agent is gonna make the, like, impact of the blow a little bit less for your clients. And I think it, again, helps to establish, like, a level of relationship and professionalism between you and the co-op agent. And I really just focus on relationships with co-op agents, because when the market gets tougher, and it will, because everything's like cyclical, a lot of agents will drop out. So, like, you know, there's a lot of agents out there right now, but people get into the business when it's really booming. They think it's an easy, quick way to make money, and they drop out when things get tough, because it's not worth it to them to renew their license, to do the continuing education. So you're going to be back to like a smaller core group of realtors that are working in your, you know, the locations that you prefer to do business in as much as you can. So really having good rapport with those people is going to take you a long way, and it's going to do a lot to help your clients.
Yeah, it's the worst making those calls as a listing agent, but I feel like if they took the time to show the house, they took the time to write up the offer, and send the email, and do all that stuff, they deserve a
Yeah.
30-second call from me
Yep.
telling them that they didn't get it and why they didn't get it.
Yep.
'Cause on the other side, if I'm the buyer's agent and I know I'm up against multiple offers and I don't get that phone call and I just get the email that says, sorry, you were beat out, or we went with somebody else, then I have to take the time out of my schedule to follow up on that email and try to get some details out of it for my clients that are going to hate me
And
for
you get
20
no
seconds.
response, and you're like chasing this agent
Yeah.
down to try.
Yeah.
So yeah, it comes back to building the relationships with your co-ops.
Yeah.
Because if you do make that phone call, and in the future if they put another offer in on your listing, then
Yep.
they know that you are considerate of what they're doing. So
Yep, no,
Makes sense.
100%. And sometimes it comes down to knowing people, you know, again, that once you establish those relationships, and that comes with time, but it can happen quicker than you think. Like, it comes down to like a, hey, sometimes it's like a you owe me one type thing. You know what I mean? Like, hey, you know, Mike Mulholland, I went with your offer. You know, I pushed for your offer. You got it that last time, so now you owe me one. So when I'm making an offer on his property, I'm expecting him to keep that in mind. Not that, again, it comes down to your sellers, but the other agents can push to a certain extent when they know what's you know, staring them in the face on the other side. So it's not bad to have a little bit of give and take in a relationship. But yeah, no, I agree with the phone call thing. And some agents, they're going to be frustrated with you. They're going to take it out on you, but it is what it is. You just say, you know, I'm really sorry. I've been in this situation. I have a lot of buyers that are in the same boat. I understand what you're going through, but you know, my sellers took what made the most sense for them. That's it. So, has anybody, let's see, we have 15 minutes. Has anyone like negotiated a deal recently where there was like some real negotiating involved, or like back and forth, or anybody negotiating home inspections recently? How'd that go?
It's in process.
I mean, it's a
lot.
good step that you had an offer accepted with inspection
I
contingency.
know, yeah. Yeah, we're gonna, we haven't started yet. Some moldy basement issues.
Okay.
Trying to like think how I wanna do it.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's kinda like, it could be Pandora's box for
Mhm.
the deal as a
Mhm.
whole. So I'm not sure how I wanna approach it.
Yeah.
We also like did it during the home inspection, and it's covered under that, but we made like a game time decision, so I didn't even tell the listing agent we were doing it yesterday.
The mold test.
Yeah, so I wanna tell her like
Yeah.
ahead of us getting the results.
Timing is important, you know, like, cause it's like, okay, do I mention this now that we ended up having a mold test done? When they call, cause I hate when agents call, like, right after the inspection to say, like, how'd everything go?
Yeah,
You know, I'm like, just let me get through our period of time, let's review you know what I mean? Like, I don't like being put on the spot like that, and I'll never call a co-op agent right after their inspection and be like, how'd the inspection go? Even though I know my clients want to know, they're stressed about it, but it's like, I'm going to give them their time to digest it and not be pressing them for information. Because a lot of times, you know, if I call you, you might be like, oh, we're pretty good, you know, like I think we'll be okay. And then next thing you know, I tell my clients that, and 2 days later we get a laundry list of stuff.
Yeah.
Well, guess what? They're going to be annoyed with me. So I try to steer away from that as much as I can. But yeah, knowing like, and that's also like a skill, I feel like, really thinking I feel like as a good realtor, you have to like be always thinking like 5-10 steps ahead to kind of decide like when's the best time to bring this up, whether it's to the co-op agent, to your client. Like sometimes the time or the point where you bring up certain information can make it really different the way that it's handled by people, or the way that it's like digested by people, depending on when and how you bring it up. You know, and I never bring anything up like I'm not an alarmist, so I try to just keep even keel with things. You know, I don't want to talk them out of thinking that something's a big deal, but I also don't want to add to that like fear of like, oh my God, this is a mold infested house, it's black mold, we're all going to have mold poisoning when we move in.
Right.
You know, so I just try to be like very just, all right, well let's, you know, you guys talk, see what your comfort level is, and how can we help you feel comfortable moving forward, and that's what we're going to do, you know. So,
And that just comes down to prepping your clients. If
Yeah.
you're working with the buyers and you're going into the inspection, you're going to say, okay, at this inspection, you're going to hear a lot of stuff.
yeah,
And you're going to get a 50 to 70 page report that just covers everything.
yep,
So don't be alarmed by this whole report. We're going to focus on these issues if they come up. And
Yep.
then if you're working with the seller, I mean, you say, and the agent or your seller says, how did it go? You might say, oh, they're just going to say it's okay. Just let's wait,
Mhm.
let the period go through and see what we receive.
yep, 100%.
Because there's nothing you can do until you receive that paperwork.
Yeah, no, 100%. So when you're representing a seller right now, obviously you're praying for something that waives inspections, but it doesn't always happen. And I think having control of your clients in the fact that you do set those expectations, that goes a long way with your relationships with the agents that you're working with also. You know, because they know, like, sometimes it's out of your control. You know, sometimes you get a lead and you don't really know them. You can't push them to do anything they're not comfortable with, but it sucks when they call you and they're like, we want items 1 through 68 addressed, and you're like, oh my God, like, you know, so being able to have those harder conversations and walking that fine line of like, you always want your clients to know that you're 100% have their back, are looking out for their best interest, want to make sure that they're comfortable and educated and informed throughout the process, but you also want to let them know that you're going to have the hard conversations with them because this is what you do for a living, and you want to make sure to try and keep things together and moving in the right direction at all times. You know, like I just showed one of my best friends a house, and him and his wife keep asking me to look at houses even though they have to sell their house first and it's not even on the market. So it's like frustrating to me a little bit, but I'm like, he's one of my best friends. I'm not going to say, no, we're not going to go look at that house, because I'm like, you're not going to get it if we make an offer. It's been on the market for 1 day, you know. So I today was like, hey, you guys know I love you. I would do anything for you. I absolutely have your best interest at heart. But I'm going to recommend again, like, you're just setting yourself up for disappointment here by looking at houses before you can actually compete with any other offers. They're going to end up with probably 10 offers. They're going to line them up. Nobody else is going to have a home sale contingency. Your house isn't even on the market. You're not going to be able to compete. You know, like, yeah, it sucks for them to hear that. They know that that's the truth, but I had to have that hard conversation because, one, it's wasting their time. It's getting them excited about something that's never going to happen for them. And two, it's wasting a lot of my time. You know, so you just have to know, like, when to bring things up. You have to let people, always show people that you have their best interest at heart, because sometimes, especially negotiating home inspections, I think sometimes it's like, well, are you on my side or their side? You know, you start getting things like that because maybe you're trying to explain to them that, like, hey, I get that there's like some little electrical things going on, but like that's not a major material defect that's impacting the saleability or the price of the home. Like, the point of the inspections is looking for major items or safety concerns that are an issue. So let's really try to stick with that. I mean, some people are just more like, I can't think of the word, but like get more defensive, thinking that like maybe you're just trying to get the deal to get to settlement, or you're just trying to make your next buck. You know, so I try to steer away from that and always show people that I have their best interest at heart, because in the end, I mean, that's what makes a good realtor. Like, you have to always keep your clients' needs and wants first. So,
Yeah, I'll come to your new house and I'll tighten your toilet when you move in. Like,
Right.
we don't need to
Yeah.
put that on the list.
yeah. We got those like unlicensed handymen that were like, get them right over there after settlement.
So how do you handle? I'm seeing this a lot more. The agent notes in Bright that says sale contingent on the seller finding suitable housing.
So, I mean, one time before, I actually tried to like, we did it and it worked. We like wrote up an actual contingent addendum, but there's a lot of things to work through. I mean, it's like, so do the buyers move right along with their mortgage application and then paying, some appraisals are like $750 now. You know what I mean? Like, are they putting out the money for that stuff? When did they start inspections? Like, there is so many what ifs. So I tend to agree with Dominic and Christina when they say that, like, they don't really recommend getting into writing any kind of verbiage and making it contingent on the seller finding a home. What I tell my sellers is, listen, we can't make it contingent. So there's always going to be that, like, you need to have a contingency plan in case it doesn't work out. But what we can do is go into it knowing that we either need to look for a long settlement date or a shorter settlement with the potential for a rent back if needed. You know, and then we know you're going to have your money. We're going to look at everything that's available. And for the most part, I mean, I've only had a handful of clients that had to end up like short-term rental or moving back in with family. Like, when people are motivated and then they get excited, things just work out. You know, like, I feel like things work out how they're supposed to, and I'm a big believer in that. But I only did that once, like, actually made a contingency, and I wouldn't do it again because there was too many. In this situation, it worked out fine, but I feel like there are so many situations where it might not, and it just is putting liability on everyone.
Because I don't feel like those words, and they won't hold up in court if it's just
Not
in
at all.
the agent notes. So
Yeah, like Jamie recently, Kate recently had clients, and like she explained everything to them. Like, she had put contingent on sellers finding suitable housing in the MLS, and then they were offered a, I think, 45-day settlement with then a 60-day rent back. And she explained to them, like, you still have to be out at the end of 60 days, whether you have a house or not. Well, they understood that, but then they still got really aggravated with her. Like, they're taking our house from us, you know what I mean? Like, we were blindsided, we thought it was contingent. And she's like, no, we explained this. There's no building contingency. Like, what we did was try to get you an extended settlement with then a rent back, you know, and that's what we did. Like, we can't help. So always make sure to have that conversation where there's some kind of contingency plan. Like, nobody wants to move in with their in-laws, but hey, maybe it's something that you have to at least have in your back pocket, or have a list of like short-term rental spots that, you know what, nobody wants to think about moving twice, but sometimes that's what it takes. So that's how I kind of handle that. I just would let my clients know sellers need to find a house, so let's offer them a longer settlement date or potentially, you know, a rent back. And rent backs, I feel like can get into like some stuff too, but
yeah, it gets money.
it's a better option than trying to write up your whole contingency plan, you know, and figure out all the details.
Yeah, I'm just starting to see a lot more in agent notes recently. So
No, I agree.
it's kind of
Because it is, you really have to think through, like, when does everyone then start?
Yeah.
Because then it's like, your sellers then could find something. Maybe you say, okay, well, they don't have to, the buyers don't have to start inspections or mortgage application until my sellers sign off that they found a house and are under contract. But then what if something goes wrong with any other step? Then you're back to
there's a rate lock that's included.
Right.
So
Yeah, exactly. So yeah, you think about the rate lock. Like, there's just a lot to think about. So that kind of makes me nervous. But yeah. Anyway, all right. Anything else? Thank you guys all for coming. I appreciate it.
Thanks, Max.
Thanks,
No
Betty.
problem. No problem. All right. Well,
we'll edit out a couple of these.
yeah, me saying Jamie is a little.